Hey, good morning, everybody. Dr. Heldman here from Tech Talk Education. It's a nice, cold and clear and snowy morning here. We've got a lot of snow on the ground. And in this video, what I want to talk about is I want to go further down the road exploring Nmap. And I want to show you how we would use Nmap alongside of Metasploit to accomplish some penetration testing goal. So let's get started. This should be a lot of fun. Well, first of all, I want to show you that I do indeed have Windows XP running. You can go and download the Windows XP ISO. I would be very careful about that. I would make sure that I ran the checksum on it to make sure that it's been okay. But there are places where you can go and download a Windows XP ISO and install it inside VirtualBox. It took forever. This was like a 2-day thing. It just sat there and chugged and chugged and chugged and chugged. But it did run, and you can see it sitting in front of you. And you can see that I've got an IP address here of 192.168.1.103, and this thing is running. And I wanted to tell you one other thing. I did shut down the Windows firewall here. So you can see here I ran a command, netshell firewall set op mode disable. So in this case, the firewall is disabled on this box. There's a couple of movies that I want to do with Windows XP, and when the firewall is up, it's much tighter, even given that it's a 25-year-old OS. So that's XP. We'll put that away, and then I'll show you real quickly what my VirtualBox stuff looks like right now. So I have pfSense running, excuse me, I have Metasploitable running, I have Ubuntu running, I have Kali running, and I have Windows XP running. And one of the things that I have done is I set pfSense to bridge mode, and the reason for that is so that I could do a little bit of experimenting. You can see here it says bridged adapter. I did that so I could do a little bit of experimenting with some other exploits that I wanted to try out. So that's why it's in bridge mode right now. What bridge mode allows you to do is get out onto the internet because you're sharing your network device that you use on your regular computer with Oracle VirtualBox, so it has the ability to get out to the internet. NAT does the same thing, except when we have an inside host, like we have here, like in Ubuntu or Windows XP, they cannot get outside. So that's something that is a little bit different. But it's just a very subtle difference between bridge mode and NAT. And in this case, I'm running in a bridge mode for testing purposes. Okay, so here we go. So first thing first, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load up. There it is. There's Kali running right there. So now I know that my Windows XP box is sitting at 103, 192.168.1.103. I have a cool little list I typed out for myself, so I know the addresses of all these computers that are inside this ethical hacking network, this penetration testing network. What I want to do is I want to run Nmap on this, but I want to run a specific Nmap scan that's going to scan for vulnerabilities. So let me show you that. I'll do a sudo nmap, and here it is. You use a script, and the script that you're going to run is called vuln for vulnerabilities. So it's sudo nmap tac script vulnerabilities, vuln, and then this is the address. Now I've already run this, but I'll run this one more time. And this takes a minute for it to run. And what it does do is it does show that there is a vulnerability that's out there. All right, then here's the results, the output here. And so this is the result of running that scan against my Windows XP box. And if I do an ls, I will see that I've got XP scan here. So I'll just cat xpscan.nmap. And I get the results of what's going on here. Now I'll just arrow up through here and I can see the results of some things. There's some very interesting stuff here. So this is running the vuln scan. And you can see the normal stuff here at the top. It shows me that 135 is open, 139, 445. There's some NetBIOS stuff. The typical Microsoft remote procedure call, for example, is open. And what it would do is it does what's called port filtering, or it's a filtered packet. So when the Windows firewall is turned on, it filters for all of that stuff, and it's not going to let anything in or out unless it determines that it does need to indeed come in or indeed go out. But in this case, the Windows firewall is turned off, so I can see everything that's going on here. And there's some unusual ports that are open here. They're not super unusual, but they're more unusual than you might be used to normally. Now, the thing that we're interested in here is the vuln scripts. So here is a SMB, server message block script, that ran looking for vulnerabilities with regard to Microsoft 10 TAC 054. And this is false. I cannot do that. So I couldn't do that. But look at this. So here is a vuln, and it's MS08067, and it says it is vulnerable to remote code execution. And we talked about this before. So SMB has been hacked to death. There are a lot of hacks out there for server message block. And then it says that there's a Samba vulnerability that it couldn't find anything for. Now what we want to do is we want to take this 08067 number. I might even take the MS on here. I'm going to right click and copy that. I'm going to go out here to exploitdb.com, and I'm just going to put that in there like that and see what I can find. See if I can find anything. And it finds a bunch of stuff that's out there. So there are things that we can use to get at this Windows machine given this particular vulnerability that's going on here. So this is 08067, and it says that it is vulnerable, and it even gives you the CVE for it, the common vulnerabilities and exploitations. I think that's what that stands for. And then we can go down, we can look at the other stuff that's going on here. But this is enough for me. I know that I'm allowed to, I can get into it, I guess is the way I should phrase it, because of this MS08067. So we have to remember that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start Metasploit. Now I've got this made into a pretty big window so that I can show you what is going on here. I've got it fairly all-encompassing here. I'm going to do a sudo MSF console, which starts Metasploit console. And it'll take a minute for it to come up. It's not a big thing. It doesn't take it very long. There's our famous little MSF cow. That is the original banner, but they've added a bunch of banners to it of late. And so we're just waiting for the prompt here. Now I'm going to clear the screen. You remember that Metasploit can use the same types of things that Linux can do. So most of the Linux commands will work directly inside of Metasploit. And in fact, a lot of the TCP/IP commands that you use will work as well. So Metasploit is very friendly. I like that a lot. Now what we want to do is we want to search for this term right here. So I'll right click and paste the clipboard. We want to search for that MS08067 term, and I hit enter. And it gives me 82 possible targets for this thing. So there's a lot going on here. Let me scroll up here. Now what you're doing, typically you can see it's all kinds of languages. This thing has been hit and hit and hit. And what I'm doing is I'm looking up here at the very top to see if there's something that might be able to help us. Now this is an exploit, and as I'm reading this, it says that it is great. It allows me to automatically get into it, and it says that there's a Microsoft Server Service relative path stack corruption going on here. So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to try this exploit out. This would be something I would be fiddling with on a day if I were working with Metasploit. So I'm going to say use 0, because it's the 0th entity in this list, this big long list, this number 0 there. That's the one I'm looking for. And so I'll say use 0, and I hit enter. Okay, so now notice here at the bottom it says it's going to use Meterpreter. This is incredibly cool, because what's going to happen here is once this exploit takes off, it's going to go to the Windows XP box, get into it with a shell, and then it's going to launch Meterpreter, and I have the ability to run a variety of commands right inside the Meterpreter session. And then what I could do is, if I want to, I could suspend that Meterpreter session. It'll stay running on the Windows XP box. I can back out and launch an auxiliary that will go in and do even some more work for me. So this is incredibly cool. Meterpreter puts Metasploit on steroids. It seriously does. Now it's saying that it's defaulting. There was no payload configured. I could type in the command show payloads like this, but I don't need to, because this is exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a Windows Meterpreter reverse TCP shell. That's exactly the thing that we're looking for. So the next step now, I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm going to say show options. What this does is it says, well, I'm going to go in on port 4444. This is me. Localhost is me. That's my Kali machine. And I made myself a little card so I could remember the IP addresses of everything. Now you notice that our host here is blank. We have to set our host. It says it is required. Generally speaking, our host is the only thing we really need to worry about. Not always, but most of the time, our host is definitely something you will have to set. So I'm going to say set our hosts to 192.168.1.103. That's my Windows XP computer. And I will clear the screen, and I'll do another show options just to make sure that it got filled here. And by the way, you don't need to do all caps. If you're reading books and stuff, they'll show you them typing in these commands in all caps. It doesn't have to be all caps. And by the way, our hosts plural means that you could have multiple hosts that you're trying to attack, but in this case we have only a singular host. We could also say just our host. So Metasploit's pretty friendly with regard to that. I really like this product. It's very good. Okay, so we got that. Now the next thing that we want to do is we're going to run this exploit. So you just type in run or exploit, either one will work, and it goes off and launches this exploit on the target using port 4444. Now this is very, very cool. You need to probably read this just to make sure that you've got it. So it's saying that I'm out on Kali on port 4444, and I am talking to my Windows XP box on port 1113. And I have a Meterpreter session open. Now let's go over some Meterpreter. This thing is huge. What I would recommend is that you get Meterpreter running here, you get out a 3-ring binder, and you write down every one of the commands that Meterpreter has. It does change, so over the years they've taken away commands and they've added commands. And the way that you get into them is you type in help. And so it's going to show you all of the various Meterpreter commands that are available. I'm going to go to the top of the screen here. For some reason my mouse scroll wheel isn't working today, which is fine. Now you'll notice that they have them in sections. That's exactly what I would do. I would get out a spiral notebook and a pencil, and I'd write down core commands, underline, and now here's my commands. So we typed in help, but the question mark will allow us to do help as well. Now you remember me talking to you about the fact that I can put this session on hold. That's this command right here, background. What that will do is that will leave the Meterpreter session open, and it will background it and take you back to Metasploit so you can issue other commands. And then they give you some aliases in case you don't want to type that much. There's background, alias for background, kill a background, list the background running scripts, executes a Meterpreter script, a bunch of stuff. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some more of these. So as you're going down through here, you're getting the impression this baby is really, really good. There's a lot going on here. I can load Meterpreter extensions. I can get the machine ID, the Microsoft ID of the machine attached to the session. We might try that. So we want to remember some of these. I can migrate the server to another process. Now the reason this is important here is because you get in there and you'll list the processes that the server is running, and it's going to tell you which ones the Windows XP machine is running. It's going to tell you which ones are running in privileged mode. And what you can do then is you can take and migrate a process to that particular process, and you can take over and become administrator on the machine. It's incredibly cool. So it's actually really, really useful. You can type in quit to terminate the Meterpreter session. You can connect to another session with the sessions command there. This is going to be important to you. And then you've got some other stuff, like here's the UUID for the current session. You can write data to a channel. Here are STD API file system output commands. You can do cat. You can do the regular Windows commands. You can do a checksum. You can do delete or dir. Dir is a Windows command. It's an old Windows command. You can edit a file, print local working directory, that kind of thing. You can see that there's a million commands available inside Meterpreter. Here's the networking commands: ARP, get proxy, ifconfig, ipconfig, netstat, etc. Here's some system commands coming up here. Clear the event log. Oh my goodness, that would be very cool. So you get in there, you're doing a pen test, right? You drop off an exploit, bang, clear the event logs. I'm outie. I'm going to show you an even better command for that. You can get the local date and time. You get the idea. There is a lot you can do in Meterpreter. You could reboot the machine. You can grab a shell. So this shell thing is where now I have a reverse shell into the Windows XP computer. Nobody knows I'm there. I'm shelled in. I'm working on Windows XP. The person using the computer wouldn't even know that I'm in there. Now what I could do is I could run this shell command, actually shell out again to the Windows XP machine itself, and run native Windows commands as opposed to Meterpreter commands. I could shut down the remote computer. I could suspend. All kinds of stuff here. Here's some user interface commands. I could enumerate desktops out there, get a desktop. I could send keystrokes. I think this is amazing. I think if Ma or Pa Kettle were working on a computer and you started sending keystrokes to them, they'd probably have a heart attack. That would be very, very scary. So you can do a bunch of key scans. You can send mouse events. You can even share the screen, and you can watch the remote user in real time. That, to me, is kind of freaky. I think that's freaky. Now, I do want to say something about that. You're probably always better to buy these little patches that you can take off on and off really easily on a webcam. I think it's good to have a patch on one of those cameras so that if somebody did happen to grab a session, they couldn't see you. That would be very scary. Speaking of webcam commands, here's some webcam commands. You can turn on the mic to record. You can chat, so you can start a video chat with whoever it is that you're hacking. That would scare the dickens out of me, I can tell you. You can list out the amount of webcams there are. You can play a video stream. You get the idea. And then I can play an audio file, so you could rickroll them if that's something that you had in mind. That would scare them to death as well. And you can elevate the privilege to that of local system. And then there's some password commands. And these are all worth knowing about. I think you should write these down. Here's hashdump. This is incredibly useful. Now what happens is in Windows you have what's called the System Account Master. It's called the SAM. And it keeps track of all of the users on the machine along with their hashes. So the machine deals strictly in hashes. And what we need to do is we want to see if we can hack a hash. We're not going to sit and try to brute force a hash here inside this Meterpreter session. So what hashdump does is it dumps all of the hashes, allows you to take a copy of them, move them into your Kali computer, and then try doing a brute force on those hashes where you have the time and the energy, and you're not going to be caught by some sort of a, security administrator or the user or whatever. So hashdump's super useful. And then there's this command called timestamp. What this will do is it sets the date and time. It literally means stomp it. It's going to stomp it down, and it's going to crunch the date and time so that it is not, they cannot tell when you have been in there. All right, so let's go look at a couple of commands. So I'm going to scroll up here and see if there's a couple of commands that we can look at. And I'm going to do this one, sysinfo here. So what you do is you run down to your Meterpreter console right here. I'm still in Meterpreter. Notice here that it's changed from MSF6 to Meterpreter, so that means Metasploit is running in the background. It also means that I have a Meterpreter shell that's connected to the Windows XP computer, and now I can run both Meterpreter commands, and I could even shell into the Windows XP box and run Windows commands natively right on the Windows computer. So now I did that, and I forgot the command I want to do. I want to do, what is it? Sysinfo. There you go. Okay, I'm going to do sysinfo here. So I type in sysinfo and hit enter, and it queries the machine. And it says, oh, this computer's name is TechTalk. It's running Windows XP, Service Pack 3, it's x86, English US. It's a member of a work group. There are 2 users logged on, so you remember that I'm logged on to it natively in Windows XP, and now, oh, I'm logged on to it using Meterpreter as well. Let's try another command. Let's see if we can do something else here. Let's try this one here, get desktop. Let's see if that will work for us. Get the current Meterpreter desktop. So I'm going to try get desktop, and you can play around with these all you want. What would be fun is to have your Windows XP box hooked up with a webcam, and a mic. Even though it's inside a VM, that'll work just fine, and you could test that out and see how that looks. Alright, so it says we got the desktop session 0 now. So now we have some sessions that are sitting out there. Let's type in the command sessions and see what we have. So it says TAC-I is to interact with the provided session ID. Now when we ran this command get desktop, what it did was it created a Meterpreter session on the desktop for us, and it is session 0. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to say I'm going to interact with this. So I'm going to type in sessions TAC-I, and I'm going to go with session 0 and see what that looks like and hit enter. Let's try a couple other commands. So let's try get UUID. I think that's the command. So I can type in other commands here, like I can type in UUID, and this tells me who I am right now. Let's try this command here where we do a screenshot, grab a screenshot of the interactive desktop. So let's go see what that looks like. We'll try the screenshot command, and hopefully it grabs a shot of it, and I saved it to home Cali JPEG here. So the concept here is that you can do a whole bunch of work just behind the scenes. So you are inside this Windows XP box. Nobody even knows that you're here. And you can mess around. You can even invoke PowerShell here. You can invoke PowerShell commands inside here. You can also do it when you shell out to the actual Windows computer. You could do it that way as well. So there's a lot to know. So this Meterpreter thing is pretty dang cool. And the thing to do is to find a Windows XP exploit. You could use Windows 7 for this as well. You're going to have to remember that you've got to turn off the Windows firewall so that you don't have to worry about it getting in the way. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what this looks like when we background this thing. So the command up here is background. What that's going to do is background the current session. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to say background. Boom, like that. Okay. Now notice what's happened here. It says that it's backgrounding session 1, and you can have multiple sessions open. And then it brings you back to Cali, or to Metasploit here with this original one running. Now why is this useful? Well, if you have a Meterpreter session that's running and it's running against that Windows XP machine, I've got a shell there. Now what I could do is maybe grab an auxiliary that would do even some more work for me and snap it into this work here. Now the way that you see your sessions that are open is you just type in the sessions command, and you can see that I have this one in place. So I'll type in sessions TAC-I interact with ID 1, and boom, now I'm back to my Meterpreter session. So that's very, very cool. I just wanted to show you how this works when we're working with. Now in this case we've done an Nmap sweep, so we found out the vulnerability in the Windows XP box. I did run you through how to install Windows XP. You can download the ISO. If you get a SHA value, like a hash value for it, I would definitely check and make sure that the values match, so you're not dealing with someone that's put some malware out there for you. Install Windows XP in a virtualized VirtualBox environment, and then turn the firewall off. Run an Nmap scan on it for vulnerabilities, and then jump into Metasploit and grab a Meterpreter reverse shell and mess around with Meterpreter, because it's extremely cool. Now, finally, the way to get out of all of this is you just type in exit to exit the Meterpreter session. Boom, like that. So now it's all done. And then if I type in exit again, I can get out of Metasploit and clear the screen. That's it. I hope you had fun with that. And listen, if you like my channel, love it. You guys are subscribing. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Tell your friends about it. You're welcome to drop off a comment. A lot of people are commenting, and I really appreciate that. And you know what? Have a great day, and I will talk to you in the next video.